Well, I hope the French were watching there, because France is counting down to the 2024 Olympic Games, quite literally, and that could be a way to save money. Organisers unveiled a sign in Paris on Tuesday to mark 500 days until the start of the Games. Anticipation is building, and so's demand for tickets. Organisers say they've sold 3.25 million tickets in Phase 1, and they had set a goal of just 3 million. Olympic fever is alive and well in France. I'm Laura Trevelyan. Thanks for watching World News America.
As fighting continues in Ukraine, join our team for the latest developments.
The Russian lines are very close. In fact, we're hearing they're just maybe a kilometre away.
See the headlines as they happen with breaking news alerts in the app, and get the full story with bbc.com/news. Follow the story for all the latest with BBC News.
This is BBC News, broadcasting to viewers here in the UK and around the world. The headlines. The pitch to SNP voters. The three candidates vying to become the next First Minister of Scotland have been grilled by a live television audience. We'll look ahead to the Chancellor's budget tomorrow as new figures show wage rises are no longer accelerating. And a report says police in England and Wales are not acting on complaints of violence against women by officers or staff. A very good evening. The three contenders to become the next leader of the Scottish National Party have been debating tonight in Edinburgh. The three candidates, the MSP Ash Regan, Finance Secretary Kate Forbes and the Health Secretary Humza Yousaf, were responding to questions from a live BBC audience. The voting opened yesterday. There are around 100,000 SNP members who have just under 2 weeks left to decide who they think should replace Nicola Sturgeon as First Minister of Scotland. At the beginning of her time as First Minister, she said, "Judge me on education." And tonight, each of the candidates outlined what they would wish to be judged on if they became the next SNP leader. Fascinating contest. Nearly 2 weeks of voting left. Brian Taylor, thank you very much. Thank you for watching it for us tonight. Plenty more on that, of course, on the BBC website. Now, we've had some insight today into how police handle complaints of violence against women. The National Police Chiefs Council found that in one 6-month period, more than 1,500 police officers were accused of violence against women and girls. And within that period, after investigation, only 13 will end up losing their jobs. The NPCC has also reviewed how cases of domestic abuse are treated by the police. Around 6% resulted in charges. Survivors of domestic abuse have told BBC News that support from the police often falls short. Our Home Affairs correspondent June Kelly reports. Dal Babu, grateful for your time this evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, tomorrow in Westminster, it is Budget Day, the Chancellor Jeremy Hunt's first full budget, and there is expected to be a significant announcement on childcare provision in England, part of a strategy to get more people back into work, and not the only incentive the government is considering. It's been briefed there will be changes to the amount people can save towards their pensions, which they hope will keep more senior doctors and consultants in the NHS. The latest economic figures underline the challenge facing the government. Regular wages rose by 6.5% in the 3 months to January. That's according to the Office for National Statistics, which sounds okay, but once the rate of inflation is taken into account, real wages actually fell by 3.5%. Our economics editor Faisal Islam has more. Well, here in the UK, tens of thousands of junior doctors, in England specifically, have been on strike for a second day. The British Medical Association is asking for a 35% pay rise for its members, arguing their wages have been cut by 26% since 2008, once inflation is taken into account. The government says the union's demands are completely unaffordable. Our Midlands correspondent Navtesh Jahal reports. For our viewers here on World News, we'll be right back with the headlines very shortly. For UK viewers, Hugh Edwards will be here with the 10 o'clock news. That's right around the corner. Do stay with us. This is BBC World News. The headlines. A Russian fighter jet has hit a US military surveillance drone, causing it to crash into the Black Sea. Washington calls the incident reckless.
At approximately 7:03 a.m. Central European Time, one of the Russian Su-27 aircraft struck the propeller of the MQ-9, causing U.S. forces to have to bring the MQ-9 down in international waters.
Stricter background checks on those wanting to buy guns in America as Joe Biden takes action with an executive order.
We remember and mourn today, but I'm here with you today to act.
Stock markets in Europe and the US rebound after days of turmoil caused by the collapse of the Silicon Valley Bank. Welcome to the programme. The US State Department has tonight summoned the Russian ambassador to explain why one of their fighter jets downed an American drone over the Black Sea. The US military's European command says the Sukhoi 27 struck the rear propeller of a so-called Reaper drone, causing it to crash. President Biden was briefed about the incident. Moscow has said its fighter jets did not come into contact with the drone and has accused the United States of flying it near the Crimean Peninsula in the direction of the Russian border. Here's the Pentagon Press Secretary, Brigadier General Pat Ryder. General Kimmett, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed. Okay. Thank you.
Sure, Christian.
Now then, in other news, President Biden has signed an executive order to enforce tighter rules on gun sellers, which moves the US a little closer to what we might consider universal background checks. Here he is, arriving at Los Angeles airport a little earlier. He made the announcement in the suburb of Monterey Park, a community that was devastated by a mass shooting in January that claimed 11 lives and injured 9 other people. Goodness me, that is pretty sobering. I hadn't heard that. Maybe we'll look at that a bit closer. Miles, stay with me if you would, because I want to turn to an interview that Ron DeSantis did last night, the Florida governor, of course, the man who they think will run Donald Trump closest for the Republican nomination next year. He's been talking to Tucker Carlson on Fox News about the situation in Ukraine. This is what he said. While the US has many vital national interests securing our borders, addressing the crisis of readiness with our military, achieving energy security and independence, and checking the economic, cultural and military power of the Chinese Communist Party, becoming further entangled in a territorial dispute between Ukraine and Russia, a territorial dispute, is not one of them. The choice of language, a territorial dispute, first of all, Miles, is interesting, and the fact that he differentiates between that and what is going on between China and Taiwan. Miles Taylor, it's good to see you this evening. Thank you very much for coming on.
Of course.
You're watching BBC News. The headlines. A Russian fighter jet hits a US military surveillance drone, causing it to crash into the Black Sea. Washington calls the incident reckless. Joe Biden, as you've just been hearing, announces new rules on gun sales, making it much more difficult for Americans to buy a gun without proper background checks. Let's talk about the markets. They closed in the last hour in New York, and they've rebounded well today after the turbulence on Monday caused by the collapse of the Californian-based Silicon Valley Bank. Several of the US lenders that suffered spectacular falls yesterday have enjoyed dramatic gains in the latest trading. That comes as the boss of Silicon Valley Bank announced today that his bank is doing business as usual within the US. So let's break down then what happened in the US banking system and why the rest of the world is watching. Here's our North America business correspondent, Samira Hussain. OK, Matt Phillips, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed for that. We will be back with Newsday in half an hour, but I want to show you something that we've been looking at a little earlier today, and it's this. A large herd of deer in Norfolk brought traffic to a standstill in the east of England. Look how many of them there are. Norfolk does have a large population of wild deer living in woodland, but locals said it is rare to see so many charging across the road at the same time. That is what you call a roadblock. A roadblock? No? Okay, we'll move on. The first set of stamps bearing the silhouette of the King are being released by Royal Mail. They're on a new set of stamps featuring popular garden flowers. These are the first stamps showing the King's profile to be widely seen by the public. The flowers are said to reflect the fact that the monarch is a passionate gardener. Meta, the owner of Facebook, Instagram and WhatsApp, has announced today it's axing 10,000 jobs. The firm had already announced 11,000 cuts last October. In a statement, the boss, Mark Zuckerberg, described the losses as tough, but he said there was no way around them. We will have the headlines very shortly for you. Just to remind you of our top story tonight, it is the crash of a Russian jet into a drone that looks a little bit like this, a Reaper drone operated by the US military over the Black Sea. We've heard reports tonight that the US State Department has summoned the Russian ambassador to explain that collision. We will bring you more reporting on that through the course of the evening. Plenty more on the BBC website. Headlines coming up.